Senator Gutierrez, you're having a busy day on the floor. For what purpose?
I've been quiet as a church mouse most of the session, Mr.
That's
President.
my line, and you have not been quiet as a church mouse today. All right. And a church mouse is a phrase that some people might not want to use, but I believe in church mouses. They're around everywhere. And
Well,
they're
I
usually
also
quiet.
got rid of my stack of Bibles for this
There
one,
you go.
so.
You're recognized. For what purpose?
For a few questions.
Do you yield?
Of course, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, as the President just suggested, I've asked a lot of questions today. And sometimes, and you'll acknowledge this because you were a federal court clerk, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you have First Amendment free speech cases, as they're laid out in legislators across the country and legislatures across the country, that back and forth sometimes establishes kind of the precursor to some of those cases, correct?
Yes, sir. It sure can.
As a matter of fact, you and I have we've done this before on lots of bills.
Yes.
You had a drag bill the last session, correct?
So last session we had a similar bill to this one, but we also had Senate Bill 12, the broader bill about sexual performances in front of minors. So we had the two bills on this broad topic, just to make sure we're talking about the same one.
That's right. And those bills are now enjoined. They're in the court process, and they haven't gone anywhere, those pieces of legislation that passed as law.
Senate Bill 12, that's right. We're waiting to hear from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's been briefed, and we're looking forward to see what they say.
Are you aware, do you recall the analysis that courts do when evaluating a First Amendment case?
When First Amendment rights are implicated, those get great protection, as they should. And so, you correct me, but if I think what we're talking about is the state must have a compelling state interest to regulate in that area.
What is content-based discrimination?
So content-based as opposed to viewpoint-based, and you're a much better lawyer than I am, so you're going to have to help me through this.
I'm just reading. You're doing really well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
What is the difference between content-based and content-neutral laws that limit speech?
Well, if we're talking about when a position is maybe politically unpopular, maybe a minority position, of course, those are positions that often most need protection by the First Amendment. And so if you're talking about that type of speech, that's one thing. In this case, of course, we're not talking about the nature of the materials being read, but we're talking about their exposure to children and their effect on children.
To your point, let me give you the answer, and you can agree or disagree with me. Content-based laws are laws that regulate speech based on the subject matter or viewpoint, correct?
Yes.
And content-neutral laws are laws that regulate the time and place or manner of speech, not the content, correct?
I believe that's generally correct, yes.
Okay. And viewpoint discrimination occurs when the government regulates or restricts speech not just based on its content, but based on the specific perspective, opinion, or ideology expressed.
That is also part of the First Amendment jurisprudence. I agree.
Okay. And the level of scrutiny involved in these types of cases is what our Supreme Court has always called a level of strict scrutiny, correct?
So the least restrictive means to accomplish a compelling state interest, as a rule, I think is what we're talking about, the burden the government must meet.
That's right. But on First Amendment cases, our Supreme Court generally applies a strict scrutiny test, correct?
I believe that's the general rule, yes.
You mentioned earlier a very interesting word that you used in your layout here, or when you laid out your bill. And you said that you believe it's narrowly tailored. As a matter of fact, the government must prove that the law is narrowly tailored to serve a compelling government interest. Correct?
I believe that's the general rule, yes.
They're very rarely upheld, these types of legislative attempts, are they not?
I missed the first part of the question. Go, please.
Types of laws that you're trying to pass are very rarely upheld because of that strict scrutiny test.
I would say they have to be done right. It has to be a compelling state interest, and the protection of children is not one that is normally disputed.
What is a man presenting as a woman? What is the legal meaning of that phrase?
Are we talking about the language of the bill or just broader concepts?
The language in your bill, what do you mean by a man presenting as a woman?
Well, as you know, the code construction rules at the federal and state level tell us that we use the normal meaning of words unless a word is defined or has a specific as a term of art or has a specific legal meaning that's different from its normal usage. So we could read the text of this bill. It's not very long, and we can use the normal understanding of those words to know what it means.
I guess you would say the same thing the language of your bill for a woman presenting as a man.
I believe we'd look at, in this case, at the plain language of the statute is fairly short and direct. Yes.
Back in the days of Shakespeare, when he was alive, we still have Shakespeare. Right now they're doing Othello on Broadway. When Shakespeare was alive, the men would dress like women and men, right? Depending on the character. There was not women performing the shows. It was generally mostly men, correct?
I think that's right. I think that's right historically.
So if a man is wearing a costume that looks like a dress and reads a story to children at the municipal library, does the library lose funding?
Only if, and again, if we were to read the text of the bill, we could look at line 1-30, and we'll pick up there. It says, and the person being dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment. So it is not just a female dressed as a character, which we might normally think of as a male, or vice versa. But the fact that the person is dressed as the opposite gender is a primary part of the entertainment, like we read on the website for Drag Queen Story Hour.
I'm getting a little old here. I forgot what you said. I couldn't hear what you said in front of gender. Did you say transgender? Or what did you say before gender? If the person
I'm sorry, forgive me. I was reading from line 1-30 of the bill, and I'm going to break in at the second word. And the person being dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment. So this is not just a character that happens to be playing someone of the opposite sex. The fact that the reader, the drag queen in this case, is dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment. It's not just ancillary, or it doesn't just happen to be that actress.
I get it. So
and again, I'm just relying on the language of the bill, just so we're clear.
So if they're in a costume, it's okay.
If I want to make sure I don't get this up. If the person being dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment, that is necessary to trigger the application of this bill or this law when it becomes law.
I apologize here. I guess you'll have to explain to me a primary component. Does that mean that they're the supporting actor, the main actor, the other characters in the play?
Well, if one were to go to the website for Drag Queen Story Hour and read the description of how they have described these performances, it would be pretty clear.
It's not terribly clear. I'm just wondering if someone decides to wear a costume dressed as a woman in a play, did they just violate, at the local library, did they just violate this law? And did the library lose funds?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did I cut you off?
No, sir.
They would be violated only if the conditions in this bill were met. And they're very clear. It's about a one-paragraph bill. Well, to be precise, it's lines 26 through 34, so however many that is. 8 or 9.
If a man is wearing what you would consider typical male clothes, but that man has 2 earrings and he reads a story, does that library lose funding?
The library would lose funding if the other conditions were met and the person being dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment.
So if a woman is wearing a dress and heels, but she's wearing a fake beard and making voices to sound like Thor, like the mythical god Thor, while she is reading about Norse mythology, does that violate SB18?
It would violate the bill if the person being dressed as the opposite gender is a primary component of the entertainment.
Are you aware, I got a whole list of hypos here, but I think kind of made our point here. Are you aware that Montana passed a similar bill, and that was enjoined by the federal court in Montana? I believe it's the Ninth Circuit. Almost
I'm not
verbatim.
aware. I believe you. I'm not aware of that, but if you say that's true, I'll take your word for it.
They've been enjoined. Just as you stated earlier, your SB12 from last year has been enjoined, and you're awaiting the Fifth Circuit to say or do something.
Yes, sir. That's right. Waiting on the Fifth Circuit.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator.
And thank you, Senator.